Hi, everyone. Welcome to Courageous Caregiving, Building Your Resiliency Toolbox. My name is Samantha Locke. I am the Alumni Family Liaison for the Eating Recovery Center and Pathlight Mood and Anxiety Center. I am joined tonight by two wonderful females, Nancy Eigel-Miller, who is the founder and executive director of 1 in 5 Cincinnati, and Dr. Ashley Solomon, who is the founder and mastermind Galia Collaborative practice in Cincinnati. So before we get started tonight, I'm going to have everyone give a little blurb about kind of their context, why we're here, and then we will let Ashley have the floor to talk to us about resiliency. So welcome and get comfortable. So for those of you that don't know, Eating Recovery Center and Pathlight Mood and Anxiety Center are well known for our reputation as leading national behavioral health care providers dedicated to the treatment of eating disorders as well as mood, anxiety, and trauma-related disorders. We provide treatment at higher levels of care for folks of all genders, ages 10 and up. I'm honored this evening to be hosting this presentation with Nancy Eigel-Miller, who is the founder and executive director of 1 in 5 Cincinnati. Nancy, would you mind telling us a little bit about your organization?
Sure. Thanks for having me here tonight. 1 in 5 is a nonprofit located in Cincinnati, Ohio, and our mission is to put mental health education programs into area schools. We work with kindergarten through college, and we put everything from mindfulness all the way through suicide screens in schools. All of that work is evidence-based, and it's all based on a data background where we're gathering data constantly and reevaluating and making changes to the programs that we're doing based on that individual culture. We work really closely with Ashley, and we are very excited to be with her tonight. So Ashley, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Just an additional plug for the work that 1 in 5 does. The impact of the work that they do is really, really incredible. And I think one of the things that I have been so inspired and impressed by is what Nancy said, but I think it bears repeating: their commitment to delivering really evidence-based interventions in the schools and organizations that they serve. I think that's such a unique element of what they do and their commitment in that space. So thank you so much, Nancy, for inviting me to be part of this evening and the work that you do. And thank you, Sam, as well. So Sam and I previously worked together. I spent many years at Eating Recovery Center, working in the field of eating disorders and with many families and caregivers struggling with eating, mood, trauma-related illnesses and their families. And it has been such an important part of the work that I do through this time. And it really fuels so much of the work that I do and continue to do now in outpatient practice. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some tools and practices with all of you tonight that are really about helping to build our resiliency toolbox as we navigate through the really challenging waters of caring for people with mental health needs, with special mental health needs, and particularly knowing that many of us are experiencing our own mental health needs alongside our roles as caregivers. So thanks again for just taking the time to hopefully invest in yourself tonight. And I'm going to share my screen. I have a few slides to share with you. So here's what I know. Caregiving for a child or a loved one, and actually before, I want to make a quick language note as we get started in this discussion tonight. And actually I got so excited, maybe a couple other logistical notes too. Quick language note is that I recognize that not everyone on this webinar tonight may be in a parenting role. There are all different forms of caregiving. I will probably use words like child or parent or loved one or person in your life kind of interchangeably. And I ask that you sort of just fill in whatever the relationship is. I think so much of what we will discuss is irrespective of what type of relationship you have. So I hope that it'll be really applicable, but just a note that I might refer to the people that we love in that way. Another note is that we're going to try to leave some time at the end for questions and potentially even a little bit of discussion. So you are welcome to use the chat feature to jot down any questions. I urge you to do that as we go along so that when we get to the end, you haven't forgotten if there's something that came up. And I'm going to do my best to leave some time for that. I'm infamously not great at it, but I am going to challenge myself tonight. So I think that was all of the logistics that I wanted to share. So caregiving for someone with special mental health needs is one of the most challenging and potentially life-altering experiences that we can endure as human beings. And I probably don't have to share that with all of you. If you've chosen to be here, you know what a journey that can be. And so I think that where I just want to start is offering each of you a kind of deep breath as we kind of settle into this discussion tonight. I think that those deep breaths are well earned and well deserved. And so we'll talk tonight, we'll talk about breath as one of the tools that we can use. But just as we're starting, maybe very literally, I ask you to take a deep breath, just sort of settle into your body. There might be a lot going on. It might be dinner time at your household, but just sort of thank yourself for taking a few moments to sign on tonight. And then let this day completely out. If you're here in Cincinnati, it's been a day of rain and thunderstorms on and off, and it's probably a lot of good metaphor for life with like the sun keeps coming out and then the rain comes and the sun comes out unexpectedly. So I'm sure we could do a whole metaphorical analysis of that, but just let whatever has brought you to this point in your day be breathed out, and thank yourself for coming. Okay, so one of the most pivotal things that I learned in my early training as I was becoming a psychologist, and I was working in a field that fortunately relied a lot on caregiver support and involvement, was that we can never, ever, ever assess a relationship or a family sort of accurately when they're in the midst of a mental health crisis. And the reason for that is because crises, whether those are more acute crises or more long-standing mental health challenges, they bring so much turmoil and change to a family and a system that it becomes sometimes for many of us very hard to see what was there before or what even could be. And so I offer that perspective to you as well, even for yourself. I know that many of the caregivers that I talk to, are carrying a lot of feelings of guilt or shame or stress or anxiety, or often a combination of all of those things, and feeling like they may not be doing the right things, or why am I burning out, or why am I so overwhelmed, or it shouldn't be this hard. And what I would suggest to you is that it just is this hard. You haven't done anything wrong to make it this hard. It just is this hard. And as you can see, there's a community of people signed on tonight who can share in that experience. And we'll talk a little bit later about the role of community support. So whatever feelings that you have about yourself or about your loved one kind of coming into this conversation too, I want you to recognize that those are valid and real experiences. There's literally nothing that you have thought, no thought that you have had that is unique or that hasn't been thought before. nothing. So we're going to just acknowledge that as we talk about what some of the resiliency tools that we can put in place are in our daily lives. So we know, as I was talking about this idea of mental health crises, whether acute, whether longstanding, there's sort of this myth that comes up around the idea that mental health, or well, crises in general, they reveal our character, that, you know, when we're in a crisis, however we respond to it, that's who we truly are. So if we start screaming or start lashing out when, you know, the stakes are really high, or when the pressures are really pushing down on us, you know, that reveals something about our true character. And I actually like to start with this as a myth, because I think that it really undermines our ability to show compassion for ourselves. And I think that it's flatly untrue. I think that over time, crises tend to shape our character. They can build resiliency. They can certainly build burnout. They can build resentments, build chronic stress, but they also can build resiliency and character. And that's why we're all here tonight, because we know that to be able to manage some of these challenges in the long term, which I know we all want to, we know that we have to build our resiliency toolbox, and we want to shape our characters based on the very best that we can be in these situations. So I actually want to start with two principles as we get into some of the tools I'm going to offer you. I want to give a bit of a backdrop, because I think that we have to start from a very fundamental place. And what I want you to notice, because we're going to talk a lot about checking in with our bodies and our sensations, is just what your sensations are as I share these two principles with you. Notice if there's a lot of resistance to feeling that you can take them in or embody them. That's perfectly fine. If you notice that your muscles clench, or that your breath catches in your throat, just notice it. So there's no right or wrong, but I just invite you to become aware of what your reactions are. The first one is that you are the exact parent or caregiver partner that your child or loved ones need, or loved one needs. So you're the exact parent that your child needs. And with that, you already have everything within you that you need to parent this child. So just notice what your response is to that. You can throw something at the computer screen if you really disagree with me and it makes you angry. I know when I first heard or thought about this idea that I'm the exact parent that my own children need, I know that for me, I felt a deep sense of relief that then was met right behind it by sort of a wave of sadness. So there was a lot of emotion around being able to acknowledge and accept that. I think there's a part of me that was grateful to think that that could potentially be true. There was a part of me that was almost scared to acknowledge that that could be true, because I certainly hadn't been feeling that way, especially in the most challenging and trying moments. But it is something that, particularly as a therapist that works with families, I have come to believe and try very hard to embody, that everything that we possibly need to give our children what they need and deserve is already within us. We, of course, can benefit from honing those skills and tools and practices to be able to kind of draw out the best of us, but we have it inside us. There's no special hack or device that we need that isn't already within us. And that's why when we talk about some of the resiliency tools, that's why we focus on resiliency tools, because if we are the parent or the loved one that our our person needs, then we have to maintain our own ability to do that caregiving. We have to nurture ourselves so that we can invest in the ways that our loved one needs us to. Okay, so the second principle, so clear that out. The second principle is that we can reinvent our relationships in each and every moment. And what I mean by that is that everything that comes before this very moment, it's not that it means nothing. It's not that it hasn't shaped or colored our relationships or interactions or feelings, but that we have the power to truly reinvent our relationship and the way that we are responding and interacting with every single breath that we take. And I think that that is truly power. And that's truly, for me, that's a really liberating statement. And it's not just a sort of sentimental idea. So I know this to be true because of brain science. So brain science is so helpful in understanding one of the kind of core principles that have come out of the last few decades of neuroscience research is just how malleable the brain actually is. So the brain is constantly changing. I read this if you really are into neuroscience stuff, there's a really good kind of layperson book called Live Wired, and it really gets into how Dan Siegel is also another neuroscience writer and clinician who talks about the same kind of concepts of how the brain is constantly updating, which is one of our uniquenesses as human beings. And what I think, particularly as a therapist and as a mother and as a human, that's so powerful is that interpersonal connections, our relationships, are one of the, if not the biggest driver of changes in the brain. So the way that I respond and interact with you in this very moment is changing the structure and the wiring and the circuitry of your brain. And I think that that's so powerful. So I bring that up as a second principle for us because I want you to know that the way that we interact with each other, the way that we interact with our loved one who may be struggling with mental health issues, the work that we are doing to care for ourselves and to build our own resiliency, that is having an impact on that other person, because it has to, because every time we interact with them in a way that's more regulated for ourselves, that's more grounded, we are helping their brain to co-regulate and to get some of that same positive effect of the work that we're doing. So if for no other reason than if we can't feel that we're deserving of making some of these changes for ourselves, know that we are having a powerful impact just by supporting ourselves and building our own resiliency. So the practices that I want to share with you tonight can really be kind of captured in what I'm going to call embodied resilience. And so you've gotten a little flavor of that in terms of that embodiment piece as I've been talking. That embodied resilience is about tuning in and tapping into the skills and tools that we already have. If you own a body, then you have the tools to practice some of the things I'm going to share with you. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to buy anything, you don't have to do anything except work with the body that you have. And embodied resilience is about being able to cultivate the ability to withstand the really hard things by using those tools that we have as beings with bodies. I'm going to focus on kind of 3 parts or stages. We could call them steps, although I don't love that quite as much, though they do sort of work best as I'll share with you when we really focus on them in sequence, particularly covering the first one. But I want to keep it really simple, because when we are stressed, or we are burnt out, or we feel like we can't do this anymore, the last thing that we need is some kind of complicated, framework or system or 25 parts sort of step process to be able to like get back reconnected to ourselves. So there's 3 parts. And this is really also based on one of the things that I know to be true about. I've studied burnout for a long time. So I've studied burnout in the context of workplaces, people who do frontline work, people who work in corporate jobs, but also in families, and caregiver burnout in particular. And one of the really interesting research findings is that caregiver burnout, all burnout actually, is not correlated to the amount of stress or the degree of a stressful situation at all. So how do we make sense of that? So someone in a stressful situation that we might call a 10 is no more or less likely to burn out as someone who's in a stressful situation that we might consider a 6, for example. We understand that to be a function of a few things. There's obviously lots of differences in our level of resilience, the resources that we have. So what we find is that while it's not correlated, the likelihood of burning out isn't correlated to the degree of stress, it is correlated to the amount, 2 things, the amount of resources that someone has at their disposal. So how supported they feel by their community and their environment, and our perceptions of our ability to be effective. So if I start to doubt my ability to be effective, that is a key for burnout. If I start to feel like I'm actually not the right person to be able to do this caregiving, who was I kidding to ever think that I would be able to deal with the stress of this situation? Those are the things that lead us down the path of burnout. And what burnout really is it feels a lot like depression, but it feels like I'm ineffective. I feel so run down that I don't know that I even care anymore. It starts to affect our motivation and our sense of kind of connection to other people. That's that state. That's that really, really dangerous state, in the sense that that then gets correlated with a lot of other mental health challenges, and it's obviously not good for anybody in a family for us to burn out. So that, going back to embodied resilience, that's what this is all about. It's about resourcing ourselves and believing in our own ability to do this work, because those are the 2 things that are going to let us do that in the long run. So this model of embodied resilience is based on 3 principles, all of which, just to make it easy, start with C. So, and when I started to think about these words, there's so many great C words out there. It's really amazing. So calm, collected, collaborative. So a lot of those words too, if you can't remember these words, you can plug those ones in. Just try to remember the letter C. But the first one is the idea of coherence. And what I mean by coherence is the idea of finding our emotional and physical center so that everything is aligned, sort of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors can be aligned, and values can be aligned, so that we can make decisions and operate from a place of coherence and consistency. And I'm going to break that down a lot more. But it's really about emotional coherence, which is something that when we are in a highly stressful, highly charged kind of crisis, conflict situation, that goes out the window. And so I want to spend actually probably most of our time tonight talking about this, because it's so fundamental to the next 2 C's that we're going to talk about, and how we can bring ourselves to greater coherence. So to understand coherence, we actually have to start with a little bit of biology. I'm actually going to I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a minute so you're not just staring at a word and you can see me as I talk about this. I'm not sure if we're seeing Sam, your screen, or me. Okay, so when human beings, some of this may not be new, but as a review, when human beings are in a stressful situation, whether that is a lion chasing us, whether that's having a report at work due in 20 minutes that we just learned about, whatever the stressful situation is, what happens for human beings is that our sympathetic nervous system gets activated. Our sympathetic nervous system is the part of our nervous system, our brain, that is working to spring us into action so that we can make quick decisions, that we can figure out a situation, whether that's escaping the situation and getting away from the lion, whether that's springing into action and getting that report done as quickly as possible. It's activating our whole body. So we start to, our breath becomes more rapid, digestion shuts down, our heart rate increases. We sometimes have more perspiration, but meanwhile, all the non-essential parts of our physiology really start to slow down so that it can focus on either springing into action or getting the heck out of the situation that we don't want to be in that moment. That's the sympathetic nervous system. Once the threat has resolved itself, we've escaped the lion, the report's turned in, or we, have escaped work for the day, whatever it might be, then our parasympathetic nervous system kicks in. Our parasympathetic nervous system is the system in our body that's specifically designed to tell us that we are okay, that we are safe, that everything is going to be just fine, and we can relax. Our brain starts to kind of come back online, our digestive process picks up, and we can feel relaxed and secure and safe. So for a long time in the field of psychology and biology, we have known about these two systems, and we've thought about them sort of just working in opposition, if you will, to each other. Sort of one's activated at one time, and then the other system kicks in once a threat is resolved or once a threat starts. And we had this sort of dual model of our nervous system, and that's how it worked. We started to recognize more recently in sort of the history of this research that there's another system as well. And I'm going to go back to my slides for just a minute so that I can show this to you. And that is a system that relies on what's called our vagus nerve to help us not only feel out of the immediate threat situation, but actually socially safe and able to engage with people. It's the part of us, it's the mode that we're in where we can be creative, where we can connect with other people, where we're really kind of feeling ourselves. It's that top part on that ladder. This is the polyvagal ladder. So when we are in the most acute sort of high stress situation, what happens is that our brain starts to actually shut down. So that's, if we start at the bottom of the ladder, the dorsal vagal system kicks in, and it not only makes us feel nervous and afraid, but it's like the nervousness or fear is so high that our brain is like, I got to check out. I can't even tolerate this level of stress. And so when we feel like, well, I just shut down. I felt like I couldn't even feel anything anymore. I'm just numb to the situation. I felt like out of my body. I didn't even know what I was doing. That's when we are in that most acute, highly stressed sort of dorsal vagal space. Before we can get to that ventral vagal space, that space where we're calm and grounded and connected with other people, we actually have to go through the flight or fight or sympathetic mode or space. That's the part where I was telling you before, we spring into action or we get the heck out of the situation, that flight or fight mode. We actually have to go through that mode to get to the safe, calm, collected space. So if this is still feeling a little bit confusing, I'm going to walk you through it in terms of what that actually looks like in just a second. So our child starts to have a meltdown related to something that happened at school that day. They felt rejected by some of their peers. You know that happened. They start really lashing out at home. Maybe things really start to escalate. Things are picking up to the point where they're screaming, maybe they're threatening to hurt themselves, maybe they're threatening to run away. You are becoming so activated. Maybe they're actually like lobbing, criticisms at you, telling you what a horrible person you are. You'll never be able to help them. Maybe those are some of the things that are going through your head. And you reach a point of such emotional overwhelm that you almost feel shut down or frozen. You don't even know what to say anymore. You are so enraged or so overwhelmed that you can't even respond at that point. So you are at the bottom of that emotional ladder right now. What we want to do, what we'd love to do, of course, is to get ourselves all relaxed. And maybe that's where we've heard things about like, well, take a few deep breaths. And you just want to like throw the book at whoever told you to do that, because that seems like the most ridiculous thing that's never going to be able to be effective in this high of a stress situation. And the reality is that's kind of true, because that's too big of a jump. We're jumping over that sympathetic nervous system response to be able to get back into like a really true, calm, grounded place. To get what we can do in those moments is get into our sympathetic. We need to go one level up and activate our sympathetic nervous system. And if you've ever been in like a near car collision, or maybe a car collision where, or car crash where it happened, but you ended up being safe, you probably know that feeling of being sort of frozen in panic. And then later, after maybe it's a few minutes, maybe it's a few hours after sort of the immediate danger has passed, there's this just discharge of energy. Maybe you burst into tears, maybe you like physically shake, like you do that shudder where you're kind of coming back into your body. That's because, so psychologists that study this say that that's actually because our flight or fight response has been kind of laying right beneath the surface while we went into shutdown mode. And before we can let go and get back to true calm, we've got to release it from our bodies. So when we're in that high frozen stress situation, what we can physically do in that moment is actually work to release that energy. We've got to get into our sympathetic nervous system. So that can look like shaking our bodies, shuddering. That can look like splashing cold water on our face, something that really is a kind of more shock to our system. It's often, it may involve giving ourselves a minute to leave the situation, which we would need to do. And then we have the ability to get to that highest level. Then we can use things that activate our vagal nerve, our ventral vagal nerve, to actually get back into a more calm and grounded place where we might be able to think about what the next thing that we want to say is, to think creatively about what did our, family therapist tell us last week to do in this situation, to go call a friend and connect with somebody. So the practices, and I want to take just a minute to kind of practice two of these with you that activate that highest level of our ventral vagal system, are things that stimulate the vagus nerve. And two really simple things that we can do that I think are excellent tools. One are to do what we call an extended out breath. So, or sometimes we call it 4-8 breathing. We breathe in for 4 and then out for 8 counts. So in for 4, out for 8. We're trying to make our exhale twice as long as our inhale because that alone tells our brain that we're in a safe situation, that we can release sort of the tension that's being held in our body, and it stimulates our vagus nerve. So if you want to practice that, let's do it once together, once or twice even. We'll do it twice. We're going to breathe in for the count of 4. I'll count for us, and just breathe out for the count of 8. So in for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out for 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out for 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. So you might notice that I actually also put, I tend to do this without even thinking. It's become so habitual for me, but I put my hand on my heart. For me, that's one. That pressure is also another just sort of cue that stimulates the vagus nerve. You know, physical touch when it's safe, when it's ourselves or someone we love, can stimulate the vagus nerve and help to bring our nervous system kind of back regulated. It also just like sort of helps me remember kind of a heart center and feeling kind of the pace of my heart rate at that time and getting more connected with that. So you can do that if that feels good for you. You don't have to make that a part of it. The other tool that helps to stimulate the vagus nerve and is with something that's always with us is actually humming. So it might sound a little bit weird, especially if you start humming in the middle of a conflict, but you know, we do what works. Humming stimulates our vagus nerve because of the way that humming hits a middle part of our ear. This is just super interesting to me. The way that the tone of humming to ourselves stimulates the inner part of our ear, which is directly connected to our vagus nerve, which is directly connected to telling our body that we are safe in a situation. So a really simple thing that we can do when we're feeling in that fight or flight state or anxious or irritable is to hum to ourselves for just a moment. And, you know, you are welcome to hum like your favorite show tune, but it can literally just be, or it can be something with pitch and with rhythm, none of which I really have, but do that for 20, 30 seconds. And that's another tool that can stimulate our vagus nerve and help us get into a more calm or grounded place. So the reason that we use these tools and we think about this polyvagal ladder and where we are, one is because it can help us to assess in moments of crisis, whether that's crisis with our loved one, whether that's other crises that we're dealing with, where we are. Am I frozen and shut down? Am I feeling like I've got to escape the situation, or I'm sort of in that energized place where I just want to fight? Or am I calm and grounded? The calm and grounded place is the only place where our thoughts, our executive functioning is operating at its highest level. Our executive functioning is the aspects of our brain that are related to, and our thinking that are related to, like good decision making, good planning, being able to communicate effectively. So if we are in our sympathetic nervous system activation, or if we are in that frozen shutdown mode, we are not able to respond in the way that's most aligned with our values. And we are 99% of the time going to end up in a situation that doesn't make us feel good at the end of it. So if we can use some of these tools, and there are lots of others, if we had more time, we could go through other specific tools. Honestly, there are great YouTube videos out there. There's lots of good resources for if you type in like vagus nerve activation or even just calming strategies that help us to get to that highest level. And when we do, we then have the ability for the next C, which is connection. Connection is the only place at which, when we go back to the way that the brain is malleable and changes as a result of our interpersonal interactions, it's when we can establish true connection that we see those changes happening for ourselves, for our loved one. So there's sort of 3 points of connection. There's connecting with ourself, which is what that first coherence part helps bring us, connection between our physical, our emotional, and our behavioral selves all together. Then there's connection with our loved one, the person that we might be or people that we might be directly supporting. And then at a more macro level, there's the connection that can happen with supportive others. So what you might notice is that if you don't have that emotional coherence, if you feel completely dysregulated, you are frequently shut down, you're frequently numbed out, or you're frequently in this high stress, high panic mode situation, you are probably not feeling that sort of amazing feeling that comes from feeling really connected to that loved one. And you're probably not even able to take in the support of others, even if others are giving you support, are offering to help in different ways, or checking in, asking you who you are, or how you are, not who you are. You probably are not able to feel the true benefit of social connection because you're feeling so emotionally dysregulated. So that one has to come first. Once we have some tools and some practices to help us get into that coherent mode on a more regular basis, then we're going to find that we can connect in a different way with other people, including the person that we love and care about most, and that we're doing caregiving for. We also find that we can use our 3rd C, which is creativity. So creativity, it's sort of an interesting tool when we think about resilience, but when we think about what are the things required to give care for a person with mental health challenges, I don't think we give nearly enough attention or sort of value to the role of creativity, because caring for a person with these kinds of needs requires so much creativity. It requires us to be curious, to think out of the box, to be willing to try different things, to take risks at times, even when we're not feeling sure about whether something might work or be effective. When we are in an emotionally dysregulated state or shut down or panicked, the creative part of our brain is turned off. It's, our resources are not flowing for us to be able to think differently or to think outside of the patterns that we've been in. So we fall into the same routines. And I'm sure that I'm guessing that might feel really familiar, that if you have certain patterns of conflict, you get into the same arguments, the same sort of issues come up, and your loved one is engaging in the same behaviors over and over. And we start to doubt our ability for that to change or to think about creative solutions. So to tap into our creativity practice, again, we have to feel emotionally coherent. We have to feel connected. And then lastly, we can cultivate our creativity practice. And a few things that are kind of fundamental to our creativity practice is that being creative requires of us that we suspend judgment and that we practice curiosity, that we are able to put our assumptions aside, whether those are about ourselves or about our loved one, and that we can come with a very curious sort of mindset and heart to wonder, could this idea that my loved one is proposing actually work? Could I be curious about my ability to respond differently next time and try out something that might feel really unfamiliar? I'm thinking, as I said that, I was just thinking of an example of like some of the communication strategies that we often teach when we're doing family work or couples work, where we're doing things that can feel really kind of awkward or stifled or just strange because it's not how we normally talk. I'm going to ask you to repeat everything that your loved one says, for example, or I'm going to ask you to shift the way that you are using those words. It feels weird, but when we can truly be creative and we can be hopeful and curious, then we're open to trying things that might be slightly outside of our comfort zone, but that might really move the needle. The other thing is that creativity begets creativity. So what I mean by that is that I'm not just talking about practicing creativity in the context of our loved ones' challenges, but creativity in our own lives. So being able to think flexibly, that's what creativity brings about, or that's what creativity really is, at its most basic kind of cognitive level, is thinking flexibly. That has mental health and physical health benefits for everything you could possibly think of. So when we can practice creativity, even in small ways, and I don't necessarily mean painting the next Mona Lisa in terms of creativity, it doesn't have to be artistic in terms of being creative at all, but it could be playing with Legos, getting, a jar of your kids' Legos and just building, free writing, journaling, even if that feels like I have no idea what I'm going to say, start with, one sentence and just see what comes out. Practicing telling a joke, anything that sort of stimulates you to think flexibly, to be creative, and also maybe as a side benefit, sparks a little bit of joy for you, because joy is certainly a resiliency tool too. And then lastly, just that two minds are better than one. And so when we can build, there's a really great, so for many of you, especially who are caregiving for children or even young adults. There's a model by Dr. Green called collaborative problem solving that I recommend looking up online. There's a really great book called The Explosive Child. It's not just for explosive children, though. The model is really about like, how do we problem solve with someone who is not necessarily able to always think rationally, or tends to be, explosive or highly emotionally charged. How do we come together to be able to think creatively about solutions where we're both going to have some buy-in, we don't have a lot of conflict about coming up with it, and we can feel really sort of good about what we come up with. So I'm going to pause this there. I had one more little bonus C, which is compassion and self-compassion. If we end up having a couple minutes, I'm going to walk you through just a quick self-compassion exercise, but I want to make sure we have at least a few minutes if there are any questions. I see we have a comment, and I'll just read it because I really love what she said. I believe that I am the mom that my son needs, but sure is challenging, and love is tough. And so I would just echo that. It absolutely is. And thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for sharing, Ashley. We had a few questions come in via email that I could.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to take
one was kind of a comment question. They said, I feel like I'm managing so much on my own. How do I know when I need more support?
Yeah. I'm going to give you my very biased answer, which is, there are a lot of ways that we could define support. We all need support. I love the Glennon Doyle quote, we can do hard things, but I always want to add to the end, we can do hard things, but we can't do them alone. And so I think we all need support, and that comes in various forms. If we're thinking about more kind of targeted mental health support for ourselves, which is often what people mean, I think if you have the resources to be able to have that for yourself, it is invaluable. it's going to help you kind of cultivate some of the skills that we talked about today, which are just like simply, most of us do not grow up having great emotion regulation skills or feeling or understanding sort of how our body works, or even really great like interpersonal skills, because it's been so kind of devalued, and mental health has been so devalued over time. And so we're finally coming to recognize that. 1 in 5 is a great like example of how we're moving the needle on that. But for most of us who are adults today, we are missing so much of that. And so I think that it is such a gift to ourselves, and more than a gift, it's really necessary for so many of us. I think just for being a human, but much less like being a caregiver. So thanks for that comment and question. Whoever shared that.
I have one more for you.
Okay.
Any tips on not taking my loved one's actions personally?
That's such a good question. What I would, well, first of all, just some validation of that. I think that we probably all know how personalized some of that like feedback and those actions can be, even if they're not directed, specifically at us. It can feel like a rejection of our efforts or of our love or our relationship. It's really hard to separate ourselves from that. So I would say 2 things. One, that we can't recognize that as much work as we can do, we may always have kind of an initial feeling associated with that. So our goal isn't to become so numbed out to whatever they do or so depersonalized that we are, shut down and disconnected. I often talk about how, we're fortunate that we're feeling these painful feelings because it means we have the capacity to feel them. But I think it comes in like the next step or stage. So we feel them. And then if we can get ourselves into a more kind of regulated, coherent space, then our brain sort of turns back on, and we can remember that this is not about me. This is a function, however we've sort of learned to think about it as a function of their illness. This is the illness like at work. And I think that takes like frequent checking in. So like frequent bouncing off of someone else, whether that's a therapist or a good friend, just to say like, this is what happened. This is how I felt. I was able to like bring myself back from it, but being able to process that, I think, is invaluable, because when it's happening over and over again, it's so much to carry on our own. I hope that's helpful.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashley.
Sure.
Those are all the questions that I have on my end. If anyone else out there in Cyberland has any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A box. Otherwise, did you want to go through your bonus C for us?
Yeah. I'm glad we have a little bit of time. So what I wanted to do is just to share with you. So if we can add a 4th C, it would be compassion. And what I love about compassion is that feels nice, first of all, but it's also, it's very evidence-based. And so what I wanted to just end with as a practice is what we call loving kindness meditation. And loving kindness is a really beautiful meditative practice that cultivates both self-compassion and then compassion for others. And research shows that if you practice this every day, it's another thing that stimulates that vagus nerve. It helps us to feel more grounded and connected. So it's like one of the best prescriptions I feel like I can ever give. So just in our last few minutes, if you want to find a comfortable position, you can be in for the last couple of minutes. And if you are comfortable doing so, just close your eyes. You can sit with your feet flat on the floor and your spine straight but relaxed. And keeping your eyes closed, just think of a person close to you who loves you very much. So it could be a person from the past or the present, someone who's still in your life, or someone who's passed. Could even be a pet. So imagine that person standing on your right side and sending you their love. And that person is sending you wishes for your safety, for your well-being, for your happiness. And see if you can just feel the warm wishes and love coming from that person toward you. Now bring to mind either the same person or a different person who cherishes you deeply. And imagine that person standing on your left, sending you wishes for your wellness and for your health and happiness. Just let yourself feel the kindness and warmth coming to you from that person. Now bring your awareness back to the person standing on your right and begin to send love that you feel back to that person. So you and this person are similar, just like you. This person wishes to be happy. Send all your love and warm wishes to that person. And in your mind, you can repeat the following phrases silently. May you live with ease. May you be happy. May you be free from pain. May you live with ease. May you be happy. May you be free from pain. May you live with ease. May you be happy. May you be free from pain. Now think of an acquaintance, maybe someone you don't know very well, toward whom you don't have any particular feeling. Maybe you and this person, pass each other in the street once in a while. Don't have any particular feeling, but you and this person are alike in your wish to have a good life. So send all of your well wishes to that person, repeating the following phrases just silently. Just as I do, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live with ease and happiness. Just as I wish to, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live with ease and happiness. Just as I wish to, may you be safe, may you be healthy, may you live with ease and happiness. So now think of a person towards whom maybe your feelings are somewhat complicated. Maybe you've even had some resentments or some negative feelings. Someone in your life with whom there's sort of a dis-ease at times. And remember that just like you, this person wishes to experience joy and well-being in their life. And we're going to send them all of the good wishes, repeating the following phrases in our minds. Just as I wish to, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free from all pain. Just as I wish to, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free from all pain. Just as I wish to, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free from all pain. And last, we're going to expand our awareness and picture the entire globe of people in front of us. Maybe you can imagine the whole globe as a little ball, or you can imagine it being surrounded by all the human beings that populate the earth. And we're going to send warm wishes to all living beings on the globe who, like us, just want to be happy. So just as I wish to, may you live with ease and happiness and be free from all pain. Just as I wish to, may you live with ease and happiness and be free of all pain. Just as I wish to, may you live with ease and happiness and be free of all pain. Then take a deep breath in and a breath out. Another deep breath in and let it go. And just sort of check in with yourself, notice your state of mind. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. And thank you so much for being here tonight. I really, really appreciate it. If any questions came up that you didn't feel comfortable putting in the chat, feel free to reach out to myself or Sam. And we'd be happy to get those answered for you. So may you be happy and healthy and free of pain. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ashley. We appreciate your time and your expertise. Everyone take care and be well. And we will be cleaning up this recording and sending it out so that way you can reference this at any time. Bye, everyone.